Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's the Eradicator coming to you with the latest news regarding Star Citizen. We've got some news from Chris Roberts, and for once we have also some news from the Jump Point magazine with some juicy details regarding the upcoming space stations. So, Chris Roberts gave an interview to a small channel called Back Pocket, which seems to be based in Australia. Apparently, this is an interview that Chris Roberts gave when he went with his family to Australia for the latest Atmo esport, which, did not reveal that much, but at least we got a recap about what Star Citizen is for people who are not following the project, and we did learn two things. First, it seems that the next step for player count is 1,000 players per shard, and it is something that CIG would like to do this year. I don't think that it's impossible. It was already tested in the past in the PTU, and as the server tech is getting polished, one can imagine that CIG are getting closer to this objective patch after patch. In addition, the game universe has also expanded with the introduction of the Nyx system, which means that players are now more spread across the various locations of the verse, which is limiting the risks of infrastructure saturation. What sounded more surprising was the next objective of 10,000 players per shard. Eventually, when dynamic server meshing will become a reality, that is something that CIG would like to implement. Even the more reasonable objective of 2,000 players per shard that Chris Roberts later mentioned seems a little unrealistic unless CIG makes some drastic changes in the verse to accommodate such a high player count per shard. What it would realistically take for CIG to implement such a high amount of players here would not necessarily be the backend technology, but the physical infrastructure inside the universe itself. Right now, we already see bottlenecks. Limited habitation modules means player queue to spawn. Hangar availability can create long waits, ASOP terminals can become crowded, and key transit hubs simply were not built for that density in mind. To sustain those numbers, CIG would need to dramatically increase the number of hub units, expand landing zones vertically and horizontally, multiply hangar doors and vehicle pads, redesign spaceport for higher traffic, and potentially decentralize player flow by adding more orbital stations and secondary hubs. Elevators, trams, and access corridors would also need scaling to prevent traffic jams. In other words, the verse would need to feel architecturally built for a metropolis-level population rather than today's relatively small-town infrastructure. Speaking of infrastructures, we've got an interesting update from the latest Jump Point magazine regarding the upcoming rest stops that will start to appear with the next major patch, Alpha 4.7, scheduled for the end of the month of March. So, according to Jump Point, the Nyx Rest Stops, or social stations as they are now called, are space stations built inside asteroid belts where players can stop during long journeys. They allow ships to refuel, repair, rearm just like the other stations, while also giving players a place to rest. Inside, you can actually find a few small shops, places to buy food, medical clinics, and sleeping quarters, just like again the stations that we have. These stations will handle both small and large ships using hangars and docking ports, but parking space is going to be limited, so delays can happen. They store large amount of fuel, and missions are often created to help resupply or maintain them. Now that's really interesting. Maybe this is going to be accommodating the new refueling missions that are going to be for Starfarer owners. These stations are going to be scattered throughout the asteroid belts, sometimes in very remote locations. However, because Vandal attacks are a known threat in the Nyx system, no stations have been built near the virtual jump point, which is not in the game right now, but eventually will be. It's also worth noting that these new stations are going to look very different from what we're used to. In Star Citizen, every location is designed to fit naturally into the game's larger story. The social stations in the Nyx system are different because they are not connected to the People's Alliance, the group that controls Levski. Instead, they were originally built by a company called QV Planet Services. Since the UEE did not see much value in Nyx due to its lack of easy resources or terraformable planets, back in those days with Nyx one's going to be very different, anyway, QV saw a business opportunity there. They invested heavily and built many mining stations across the system, hoping that large-scale operations would make the risky asteroid mining profitable. However, when a huge deposit of the same valuable resource was discovered elsewhere, prices crashed and QV could no longer make money. Rather than pay to dismantle everything, they abandoned the stations in the mid-2600s, leaving them behind for others to use later, especially groups that value Nyx's remote and hidden nature. It's actually not the first time that we hear the name QV Planet Services. One such station is actually present in the game for players doing the Vandal Smuggler's Tech mission, but it is in a derelict state and it is an asset that is used for a mission. Here, these missions are going to be functional, so it's going to be interesting to see them in their prime. So, overall, between the push towards 1,000 players per shard, the long-term ambitions of 2,000 players per shard, and eventually 10,000 with dynamic meshing, and the arrival of these new Nyx social stations in Alpha 4.7, it really feels like Star Citizen is steadily preparing for a much larger population and a more alive universe. The big question is whether the in-game infrastructure will evolve fast enough to truly support that vision without friction. But now, I would like to hear from you. Do you think that CIG can realistically scale to 2,000 or even 10,000 players per shard? And are these new Nyx stations a step in the right direction? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the news update, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.